In the year 3045, humanity had reached a point of great advancement. Cities spun high into the sky, vehicles zipped through the air, and space travel was as common as taking a bus. However, with progress came challenges. As Earth continued to expand, it met new life in the universe: aliens. Among them were the Xorathians, a species known for their intelligence and peace-loving nature. But they were also known for their power, and they had a unique trait: they could deactivate their combat instincts with a simple thought. In their latest mission, Captain Xara looked down at the blue planet known as Earth. She had heard tales of its inhabitants, how they fought with each other and traveled the stars in search of resources. With her crew aboard the spaceship Ether, she was excited to discover if they were as fierce as described. "Prepare for landing," Xara commanded. Her alien crew fiddled with their controls, ready for the mission. Among them was Raj, a stout Xorathian known for his strength but also his cautious nature. "Do you really believe they won't fight?" Raj asked, adjusting his helmet. His purple skin glimmered under the ship's lights. "They are united in their desire to protect their world." "We must approach carefully," Xara replied. "But keep in mind, we are explorers first. We come with open hands, not closed fists." The ship touched down in a forest, the vibrations shaking tiny leaves from the trees. The crew stepped out, taking in the sights and sounds of Earth. Bright green trees towered over them, and the air was fresh and crisp. "Let's move toward that clearing," Xara said, pointing ahead. As they walked, they spotted small animals racing through the underbrush, curious but cautious. Their first encounter with humans came unexpectedly. A group of hikers, 5 in total, appeared from behind the trees, backpacks loaded with supplies. The humans halted, their eyes wide with surprise. One showed no fear. "Who are you?" asked a tall man with short hair, stepping forward protectively. "We come in peace," Xara said, extending her hand. The humans glanced at each other, their expressions shifting from fear to intrigue. "I'm Isaac," said the tall man, accepting her gesture. "What do you want?" "We wish to learn about your species." "We want to understand," Xara explained. As the conversation grew, the other hikers introduced themselves: Mia, the quick-wit thinker; Leo, an athletic woman with determination in her eyes; Tara, a tech expert; and Sam, the practical joker. They all stood around Xara, fascinated by her shimmering skin and deep voice. But soon, things took a turn. A loud rumble echoed through the forest. Suddenly, another group arrived on the scene. They were a gang of armed men, intent on causing trouble. "Get away from them!" shouted the leader, a burly man named Rex. The gang moved aggressively toward the aliens. "Xara, we must leave," Raj murmured, sensing the tension. "No, we don't fight," Xara replied firmly. But peace seemed to be fading fast. The humans, led by Isaac, stood in a protective line in front of the aliens, ready to defend them. "Fighting won't solve anything," Mia shouted, trying to calm Rex. "Move aside or face the consequences," Rex threatened, brandishing a weapon. "Let us show them what happens when you push us," Leo growled. Suddenly, a brawl broke out. The humans' instincts kicked in, and they rushed to protect their new friends. It stunned Xara. She watched as the humans fought fiercely. They didn't seem to have an off switch like the Xorathians. Each strike was filled with passion, each movement was fueled by a will to protect. "Why are they not stopping?" Raj asked in bewilderment as they dodged a stray punch aimed at Xara. "They fight with everything they have," Xara replied, amazed by their spirit. The Xorathians did not wish to engage, but the more the humans fought, the more Rex and his men pressed on. Xara had never seen such determination. Even when faced with overwhelming odds, the humans did not back down. They were like lions, ready to fight to their last breath. Suddenly, Sam jumped forward with a daring plan. Isaac, we have to overwhelm them with numbers. Let's coordinate. The humans took a moment to communicate, and then they moved as one unit. They darted around their attackers, together creating a whirlwind of movement. They fought back with tactics and teamwork, with laughter and shouts echoing through the trees. Xara was struck by the humans' resilience. This is incredible, she said to Raj. They fight for each other, not just themselves. As the fighting continued, the Xorathians finally made a choice. Xara raised her hands and declared, "Stop. We need to end this now." Her voice cut through the chaos. The humans, hearing her plea, paused for a moment. Rex hesitated, confusion swirling in his eyes. He had not expected this display of unity. "Listen to her," Isaac shouted. "We don't want to hurt each other." Slowly, the tension began to fade. Rex's gang, realizing they were outnumbered and outmatched, began to back away. "This isn't worth it," Rex muttered reluctantly, turning to retreat. When the threat was gone, the humans erupted into laughter and cheers. They had fought fiercely, and they endured, but they had also won. "Thank you," Xara said, with genuine admiration. "Your strength is remarkable." Isaac stepped forward again, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We protect what we care about. That's what makes us human." Raj smirked, shaking his head. "You really don't have an off switch, do you?" The group chuckled, the weight of fear lifting. They had discovered not just each other, but what it meant to stand up for one another, regardless of the species. From that day on, the Xorathians and humans exchanged knowledge. They learned from each other, built a lasting friendship, and even created a new alliance in the galaxy. Together, they showed that even in the face of conflict, peace could be more powerful than force. And as they looked up at the stars together, they knew they had forged something beautiful, a union formed not through war, but through understanding, courage, and friendship. The Xylos scout ship, the Stardust Drifter, hung silently above the chaotic battlefield. Captain Xyler, his 6 eyes blinking in the dim light of the ship's console, watched the humans fight. It was a messy, brutal affair, a clash of metal and fire on a dusty planet the humans called Earth. Their sensors had picked up the conflict, a localized war between two human factions, and the Xylos, always curious about this volatile species, had come to observe. What surprised Xyler wasn't the violence, though that was certainly noteworthy. Xylos' culture valued diplomacy above all else. Conflict was resolved through intricate debates and carefully crafted treaties, rarely escalating to actual physical confrontation. No, what surprised Xyler was something far more profound. The humans seemed to lack a fundamental mechanism for shutting down their aggression. Back on Xylos, every conflict, even the most heated disagreements, could be ended with a simple mental command, the off switch. It was a biological imperative, a built-in safety measure preventing irreversible damage. But the humans. They were a different story. Lieutenant Zill, a young, eager Xylos with only 2 years of field experience, leaned in. "Captain, their bioreadings are erratic. Adrenaline levels are off the charts, even after sustained periods of combat. They don't seem to tire." Xyler nodded, his mandibles clicking softly. "Indeed. We've observed several instances of individual soldiers continuing to fight even after sustaining severe injuries. It's illogical. They have no inherent off switch." On the battlefield below, a human soldier, his armor battered and bloodied, crawled toward his fallen comrade. A bullet grazed his shoulder, but he seemed barely to notice, his gaze fixed on the enemy lines. He grabbed his comrade's weapon, a strange, loud contraption, and continued firing. The Xylos sensors picked up the human's heart rate, still pounding at a dangerous pace. It should have slowed, his body should have forced a shutdown, but it didn't. "This is unprecedented," said Zill, his usually calm voice tinged with awe. Their physiology is completely unlike anything we've ever encountered. No natural cessation of aggressive behavior. Xyler adjusted his optical sensors, focusing on a human officer leading a counterattack. The officer, seemingly immune to the chaos and carnage, barked orders, his voice calm yet firm. He moved through the battlefield, directing his troops with cold efficiency, even as explosions rocked the ground around him. The Xylo's crew spent hours analyzing the data, running simulations, and comparing it to every known species in their extensive database. Nothing matched the humans. This lack of a built-in off switch was a complete anomaly. Perhaps, suggested Zyl, it's a cultural phenomenon. A learned behavior, ingrained through generations of conflict. Xyler considered this possible, but unlikely. The intensity of their physiological responses suggests a deep-seated biological component. Their bodies aren't simply responding to adrenaline, they're responding to something deeper. Something primal. A junior Xylo scientist, Kira, piped up. Captain, I've cross-referenced the human data with their historical records. It appears their history is saturated with conflict. Endless wars, skirmishes, rivalries spanning millennia. Their culture is essentially a breeding ground for aggression, Xyler stated, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Generations of unrestrained conflict have effectively overridden any potential natural off-switch. They've bred the instinct to fight, to overcome, into their very DNA. The battle raged on below. The humans, defying all logic and physiology, fought with a relentless fervor that horrified and fascinated the Xylo's observers. They fought, not for survival, nor for conquest, but seemingly for the sake of fighting itself. The very act had become an integral part of their being, a part so deeply ingrained it surpassed basic self-preservation. As the sun began to set on the battlefield, casting long shadows across the scene of destruction, Xyler made a decision. This wasn't simply a matter of scientific observation anymore. The humans were an anomaly, a paradox, a species that defied the very laws of survival. They were an enigma worthy of further study. The Stardust Drifter would remain in orbit, monitoring the human conflict, until they understood the secrets of their bizarre, relentless aggression. The study of the human species, with its terrifying lack of an off-switch, had just become a top Xylo's priority. It was a study that would change their understanding of galactic civilization forever. For within the hearts of these humans, a war raged, not just on the battlefield, but within themselves, a perpetual internal conflict which they seemed incapable, or perhaps unwilling, to end. And the Xylos, fascinated and slightly terrified, were there to watch. On a distant planet called Zephyr, a group of aliens called the Xorathians watched Earth from their high-tech observatory. They were tall and slender, with shimmering skin that changed color based on their emotions. The Xorathians were curious about humans and had been monitoring them for decades. They found humans fascinating but puzzling. The Xorathians noticed that humans, despite their small stature and fragile bodies, had this incredible determination, especially in combat. One bright morning, an excited Xorathian named Lyra gathered her team, consisting of Jarek, a skilled strategist, and Tarek, a tech genius. Today is the day we observe the humans during their training exercises, Lyra announced. The team quickly prepared their equipment and set their ship to the coordinates of a military training camp in the USA. As the ship hovered above the camp, the Xorathians were amazed by what they saw. Soldiers were running, shooting, and performing complex maneuvers. How do they keep going? Tarek asked, eyes wide with wonder. Look at their faces, they are covered in sweat and dirt, yet they push on. Let's monitor them closely, Jarek suggested. We might gain insight into their strength. The three aliens focused on a group of soldiers who were training for a mock battle. Among them was a soldier named Jake. He was known for his relentless spirit and bravery. As they watched the exercise unfold, the Xorathians were interested in how humans reacted to stress. When one soldier fell and needed help, Jake rushed to his aid rather than taking cover. Why do they risk themselves? Lyra wondered aloud. There should be a switch to turn off their brave impulses. No switch for them, Jarek said. They seem to fight on even when they are hurt. The mock battle intensified as Jake and his team faced a pretend enemy. The humans were loud and aggressive, shouting commands and motivating each other. Lyra noted how they rallied together, refusing to back down. They act like they are in real danger, she remarked. Suddenly, the exercise took an unexpected turn. The loudspeaker crackled and a voice announced, "Now, we will simulate an ambush." The soldiers quickly formed ranks. The Qorans watched intently as the soldiers transitioned from training to a real challenge. They swiftly hid behind barriers, strategizing how to fend off the imaginary enemy. Lyra's eyes lit up. "Look. They are showing teamwork under pressure," she said. Just then, Jake noticed his teammate, Sam, struggling to keep up. Without thinking, he sprinted back into the line of fire, tugging Sam towards safety. "Get up, we've got each other," Jake yelled. The Qorans gasped, not understanding why Jake would expose himself to danger for someone else. "This is extraordinary," Tarek mused. They worked together, even when facing threats. The mock battle continued, and the soldiers faced challenges that pushed them to their limits. Fatigue set in, and some began to stumble. Yet, Jake shouted, "Remember our training. We're stronger together." Lyra turned to her companions. "These creatures have no off switch," she said, a mix of admiration and confusion in her voice. "They will fight to the last breath for one another." As the training came to an end, the soldiers gathered in a huddle, panting and exhausted but grinning. "We did it!" Someone cheered. The Qorans could feel their own excitement through the walls of their ship. Later that night, Lyra, Jarek, and Tarek gathered to discuss what they had seen. "They are not just skilled fighters," Jarek said, "but their courage and loyalty fuel their strength." Tarek added thoughtfully, "And they don't think about survival the same way we do. It's almost as if their hearts drive them more than their brains." Lyra sighed. "We need to learn more. Maybe we should try to communicate with them." Driven by their curiosity, the Qorans decided to land their ship in a remote area near the military camp. They wanted to meet humans face to face, to understand why they fought like they did. The next morning, as dawn broke, they stepped out of their ship, hidden from view. As they made their way towards the camp, they spotted a group of soldiers preparing for the day's training. Lyra took a deep breath. This was their chance. They used their technology to create a holographic form that resembled a human. "Act like one of them," she warned. "We need to blend in." As they approached the group, the soldiers looked at their funny-looking outfit, surprised but curious. "You new here?" Jake asked, eyeing them suspiciously. "Yes, just transferred," Lyra said, doing her best to mimic a human's tone. "Excited to train." Another soldier laughed. "You think you can keep up with us? This is tough." Jake shoved his friend lightly, "Be nice. We need all the help we can get." What followed was a day filled with physical challenges. The Qorans struggled but pushed through, fueled by their curiosity about humans. They felt the heat of battle and the camaraderie among the soldiers. They began to understand that it wasn't just about fighting, it was about the bonds they formed. That evening, the Qorans returned to their ship, filled with new insights. They couldn't turn off their experiences or the emotions they felt. Humans fight because they care, Lyra concluded. And that makes them incredibly strong. Jarek nodded. They may be small, but their spirit is unbreakable. The Qorans left Earth with a respect for humanity unknown to them before. They now understood that there wasn't just bravery in combat, there was something deeper, a love for one another that made humans truly remarkable. They couldn't help but smile at the thought of their new friends, those fearless beings fighting for a cause greater than themselves. The Xylos scout ship, the Zephyr, hung silently in orbit above Earth. Commander Xyler, her 6 iridescent eyes blinking slowly, reviewed the data. Humans, they had discovered, were a fascinatingly violent species. Their wars, though primitive in technology, were relentless. Their ferocity was unmatched by any species the Xylos had encountered. But the most baffling aspect, the one that had sent shivers through the entire Xylos Science Council, was their complete lack of a kill switch. Their aggression doesn't cease, even in the face of overwhelming odds, Xyler reported to her superior, Grand Strategist Xylth, via subspace communication. They fight to the death, even when defeat is inevitable. There's no surrender, no cessation of hostilities. It's illogical. Xylth, a being whose carapace shimmered with an ancient, knowing light, found the notion equally perplexing. Illogical is an understatement. All sentient life we've encountered possesses some mechanism for self-preservation. A biological trigger to end aggression, a mental override in the face of complete annihilation. We've analyzed their neural pathways, their hormonal responses, their cultural narratives, said Krell, the Zephyr's chief xenobiologist, his voice a low hum. There's nothing. No off switch. It's as if they are compelled. Xyler's team, composed of 3 other Xylos scientists, had been observing a small-scale conflict between 2 human factions on a remote island. The conflict involved rudimentary weaponry, yet the intensity was alarming. The humans fought with a barbaric frenzy, ignoring wounds, pushing themselves to the very brink of physical exhaustion and death. They exhibit a strange tenacity, observed Lyra, the team's anthropologist, her voice tinged with a hint of awe. Their determination transcends simple survival. It's almost religious. The humans fought with a level of commitment that transcended logic. One particularly striking instance involved a young female soldier, whose designation the Xylos had recorded as Sarah. She had taken a bullet wound to the shoulder, and the blood soaked through her torn clothes. Even as her comrades fell around her, she continued to fight, her eyes burning with an almost supernatural intensity. The battle was lost. Her side was clearly overwhelmed. Still, she didn't stop firing. They don't understand surrender, Krell stated, his voice a low monotone. The concept of yielding, of accepting defeat, is not part of their programming. The Xylos, a highly advanced civilization known for their measured approach to conflict, were completely baffled. Their own culture valued calculated strategy, swift and decisive action, and most importantly, self-preservation. The idea of such relentless fighting, such unyielding self-sacrifice in the face of certain defeat was incomprehensible. It went against every principle of their scientific understanding of sentient life. Over the next few months, the Zephyr continued its observations. They studied human history, delving into their ancient texts, their modern media, their cultural narratives. They found references to honor, duty, love, and loyalty, intangible concepts that seemed to drive these self-destructive behaviors. Perhaps it's their social structures, Lyra suggested. Their hierarchical systems, their ingrained loyalties, might override their self-preservation instincts. Perhaps, Xyler conceded, but it's a fragile explanation. It doesn't fully account for the sheer, unadulterated ferocity we've witnessed. Their observations extended beyond the battlefield. They witnessed similar dedication in other aspects of human life. A farmer clinging to his failing crops against all odds. A mother protecting her child from a raging storm. A scientist pursuing a seemingly impossible theory. Everywhere they looked, they saw this relentless, almost suicidal drive. One day, the Zephyr's sensors picked up a new signal, a global emergency. A massive asteroid was hurtling towards Earth. The impact was inevitable. The humans, despite knowing their impending doom, did not surrender. Instead, they worked tirelessly to prepare, to mitigate the damage, to somehow, impossibly, survive. They did not cower, they rallied. They are, fascinatingly absurd, Zylth commented on observing the global emergency response. Utterly illogical, yet strangely, admirable. The Xylos scientists debated for weeks. Were humans inherently flawed, driven by blind, self-destructive impulses? Or were they something more? Something that challenged the very foundation of their understanding of life itself? The asteroid impacted. The devastation was immense. Yet even amidst the chaos, the Xylos detected signs of survival, of resilience, of humanity's refusal to yield. Their lack of a kill switch was not a weakness, it seemed, but a source of remarkable strength. The Xylos had come to Earth to study a violent species. They left with a newfound respect for a species that, despite its flaws, possessed an almost terrifyingly unwavering spirit. A spirit that defied logic, defied reason, and defied even extinction. The humans, they realized, were not just fighting, they were living. And that, in itself, was a story worth telling. The Xylos scout ship, the Stardust Drifter, hung silently in orbit above Earth. Captain Xyler, his 6 eyes blinking in unison, watched the chaotic spectacle below. The humans, a species they'd been observing for centuries, were at it again. This time, it was a war, a conflict involving roaring metal beasts and explosions that lit up the night sky like a child's firework display. Xyler found human conflict fascinating, though mostly bewildering. Their primitive weaponry and tactics were laughably inefficient compared to Xylosian standards. Yet, there was a certain tenacity. A stubborn refusal to yield, even in the face of overwhelming odds. His first officer, Xylera, tapped him on the shoulder. "Captain, the sensor readings are unusual. Their biosignatures are spiking. Adrenaline levels off the charts, but they aren't showing any signs of surrender, even with heavy casualties." Xyler raised an eyebrow, a gesture that involved all 6 of his eyes. He peered at the monitor showcasing the battlefield. He had seen humans fight before, but this was different. These humans were relentless. They were losing, demonstrably losing, yet they continued to fight. "Analyze their communication patterns," Xyler ordered. Xylera worked her mandibles rapidly, her chitinous fingers dancing across the control panel. "Captain, their communication is fragmented. Mostly screams, shouts of defiance, and some strange incantations. They seem to be fueled by something beyond simple adrenaline." The Xylosian scientists, a group of nervous-looking creatures with oversized heads and spindly limbs, were huddled around a secondary monitor. Their leader, Dr. Kryll, squeaked nervously. "It's illogical, Captain. Their neural pathways are overloaded, but they're not shutting down. Their brains should be fried, yet they keep fighting." Xyler frowned. The Xylosian understanding of combat, honed over millennia of advanced warfare, dictated a simple principle: when overwhelmed, a rational being would surrender, or, if possible, disengage. Humans, however, seemed to lack this fundamental self-preservation instinct in the thick of a fight. "Run a simulation," Xyler said. "Project their physiological responses onto a Xylosian model. What would happen if we experienced such a surge in adrenaline and pain?" The simulation flickered to life, showing a stylized Xylosian warrior collapsing under the strain of the projected human stress responses. Their highly efficient nervous system simply couldn't handle the overload. They would shut down, their bodies initiating a protective system to prevent permanent damage. "Fascinating," Xyler murmured. "They lack a kill switch." Days turned into weeks as the Stardust Drifter continued its observation. The humans fought with a primal, almost suicidal, ferocity. They endured unimaginable pain, loss, and exhaustion, Yet they refused to yield. They pushed forward, fueled by an incomprehensible drive, a relentless will that baffled the Xorathians. Xilora, who had been studying human culture, offered a possible explanation. "Captain, we've analyzed their mythology, their stories. They seem to have these belief systems. Spiritual beliefs that transcend reason and logic." Xilor scoffed. "Beliefs? Such weak justifications for such reckless behavior. Captain, consider this, Dr. Kryll chirped up. What if these belief systems trigger some kind of endorphin surge? A feedback loop that intensifies their fight response, overriding their pain receptors and self-preservation instincts?" The more they studied, the more convinced the Xorathians became that humans possessed an innate, almost supernatural capacity for enduring combat stress. It wasn't just adrenaline, something else, something profoundly different, was fueling them. Something that defied their scientific understanding. One night, a human patrol stumbled upon the Stardust Drifter's cloaked position. A young soldier, barely out of his teens, spotted the alien ship. He aimed his weapon, a relic compared to Xylothian weaponry, but a weapon nonetheless. Before Xilor could give any orders, the soldier fired. The shot, hopelessly inaccurate, harmlessly bounced off the ship's energy shield. Yet, it sparked a chain of events. The soldier, though alone and clearly outmatched, didn't retreat. He stood his ground, a defiant figure against the backdrop of the night sky, aiming his weapon again and again, a lone voice in the night crying out against insurmountable odds. Xilora, and Dr. Kryll watched in stunned silence. This wasn't just tenacity, it was something sacred. "Captain," Xilora whispered, "I think we need to reconsider our assessment of this species. They may lack a goddamned off switch, but they possess something far more powerful." Xilor finally understood. The humans' lack of a kill switch wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. It was the key to their extraordinary resilience. It was the reason why, against all logic and odds, they continued to fight. And it was a phenomenon that the Xorathians, with all their advanced technology, couldn't replicate or comprehend. Their understanding of conflict had just been irrevocably changed. The humans, in their chaotic, violent way, had shown them something far beyond the realm of simple science. They had shown them the power of belief. In the year 2050, humans made their first significant leap into the cosmos. A group of brave astronauts set out to explore the nearby star systems. Among them was Captain Mia Rodriguez, a tough and skilled leader who had spent her life preparing for this moment. The crew aboard the Starship Horizon experienced excitement and a little fear as they left Earth behind. One day, while exploring the planet known as Zeta Prime, they detected strange signals. The crew was eager to investigate. The signals were unlike anything they had encountered before. They decided to land on Zeta Prime and find out what was going on. The vibrant forests and glowing rivers filled them with wonder as they stepped onto the alien soil. The crew soon discovered towering structures that seemed to stretch into the sky. They marveled at the buildings and wondered who could have made them. As they explored further, they were suddenly surrounded by a group of aliens. The aliens had shimmering green skin and large, curious eyes. They communicated through a series of strange sounds and gestures. Mia and her crew were prepared for contact. They attempted to communicate with the aliens. At first, it was challenging. The aliens seemed confused by the humans' intentions. But Mia, using a simple tablet, projected images of peace, friendship, and cooperation. The aliens studied the images. Slowly, they began to understand. One of the aliens, who appeared to be their leader, stepped forward. He introduced himself as Xorathian. Mia could see intelligence and curiosity in his eyes. She smiled and extended her hand, a sign of peace. Xorathian looked at her hand, puzzled, and then touched it lightly with his own. The crew cheered with joy. They had made first contact. As they conversed, Xorath explained that they had seen humans from afar. Zeta Prime had been a peaceful planet, but they had heard tales of humans and their fierce battles on their home world. Mia told Xorath that humans had a spirit of resilience, one that refused to give up, no matter the odds. Xorath listened intently and looked concerned. In a sudden turn of events, the peaceful meeting was interrupted. A group of hostile aliens, known as the Varkans, appeared. They were fierce creatures, armed and ready for battle. They had come to conquer Zeta Prime and were not in the mood for negotiation. The situation escalated rapidly as the Varkans attacked without warning. Mia felt her heart race. "Everyone, get to the ship!" she shouted. The crew reacted quickly, but some of them were captivated by the fight. They witnessed a conflict like no other. Instead of fleeing, the humans found themselves fighting back. With Xorath leading the charge, the crew and the aliens fought together. Mia found herself side by side with Xorath, dodging the Varkan blasts and retaliating with their weapons. Mia felt a surge of adrenaline. It ignited her fighting spirit. She swung her laser rifle with precision, taking down one of the Varkans, and felt the rush of combat take over. Xorath was equally fierce. He had a weapon of his own, and to Mia's surprise, he fought with agility and speed. The way he leaped and dodged reminded her of a dancer, skilled and beautiful. The Varkans were not an easy enemy. They were relentless and strong, but the humans and the Zeta aliens defended their ground fiercely. As the battle continued, the crew found themselves fighting against overwhelming odds. The Varkans kept coming, and Mia could see some of her crew were becoming worn out. But in the heat of combat, they didn't want to retreat. Their will was strong, they fought like warriors. Each time someone fell, another rushed to take their place. They had no off switch in combat, only a determined spirit. Xorath, seeing the incredible resilience of Mia and her crew, couldn't hold back his amazement. "You humans fight without fear, without thought of retreat," he exclaimed during a brief pause in combat. "You are brave." "Thank you, Xorath. We will not let them take our new friends or your planet," Mia shouted back as she fired at another Varkan. Hours felt like mere minutes as the battle raged on. The skies darkened, and the air crackled with energy. Suddenly, a brilliant idea struck Mia. They needed to turn the tide of the battle. "Everyone, gather around me. Xorath, can we channel the energy of the planet?" Xorath nodded vigorously. "Yes, we can. The energy flows through the river and the trees." "Use it." Mia rallied the crew and Xorath's forces. They formed a line and concentrated on the energy around them. Mia could feel the pulse of Zeta Prime, a rhythm that flowed in harmony with nature. With a deep breath, she directed the energy into a powerful blast. Light surged from them, illuminating the battlefield. The blast hit the Varkans, creating shock waves that sent them tumbling. The tide had turned. With renewed hope, the crew and their alien allies pushed forward. One by one, the Varkans began to retreat, fear in their eyes. They had never faced such determination. After the battle, the humans and Zeta aliens stood together, bruised but victorious. Mia looked at her crew and smiled proudly. They had fought with courage and heart. Xorath approached her, still admiring her spirit. "You humans do not know defeat. You fight without an off switch." Mia laughed. "We fight for what we believe in. And we believe in friendship and peace." Days later, with the Varkans gone, Mia and her crew worked to strengthen their bond with Xorath and his people. They formed an alliance that promised cooperation and shared knowledge. The humans had not only discovered a new world but had also found friendship and unity in battle. Mia reflected on how they had come together in the face of danger. They had shown that humans did not have an off switch in combat, but more importantly, they had proven that resilience, friendship, and courage could overcome even the fiercest of enemies. She looked at the stars, grateful for the journey that had brought them together, ready to face whatever came next.